we're going to go ahead and get started. So you guys are here for the webinar, Turks, Tips, and Tricks. Specifically, we're going to look at the new and improved NX Sketcher. For an agenda, we're going to briefly talk about who is Geometric Solutions, who we are, how we can help. Then we're going to dive into our subject, which is the new NX Sketch. There's a lot to this. There may be so much that we might have to do this in a couple of these Turks, Tips, and Tricks sessions, because we're going to see some big changes that with the new Sketcher, now dimensions, they rule. Also, there's no longer constraints. Now we call them relations. And so we'll see how many times I mix up that terminology. And then the question that everybody inevitably asks, how long can you use the old sketch? Well, we're going to find that out at the end of our webinar. So just as a note, you've got this little GoToWebinar dialog box. There is a handout, and the handout is really nice. It's a PDF file, and it actually shows a lot of the functionality of the new NX Sketch tool. So if nothing else, I encourage you to download that PDF file, and that's going to really help you through this process. Very briefly about myself, my name is Dan Turk, and I'm an application engineer with Geometric Solutions. Now, Geometric Solutions, the company I work for, we sell Siemens software solutions, but we're part of the larger Waltonen family of companies. So we have Waltonen Engineering, which employs hundreds of designers and engineers. They use that software. And then we have Independence Tooling Solutions, and they'll take and build the things that have been designed. So you could stay from the beginning to the end. We've got everything covered. The owner of our company, he put it best. Our ability to successfully partner with our customers comes from our experience in using the tools we sell every day. So these tools, we don't just sell them, but we actually use them. All right, let's jump into our webinar, the new and improved NX Sketcher. So to start with, the concept or the idea of sketching in CAD, it has been around for quite some time. The note here is that it's been around for over 30 years. But the question is, if it's been around so long, why is it that we start all of our sketches and we work with all of our sketches in the same way? Well, the answer is because the current solutions, they don't allow us to have an iterative design process. Basically meaning, as we're coming up with our ideas, it's too much like we're sketching in concrete. So with that concrete sketch, anytime you want to make a big change, what do we oftentimes do? We're just going to start over. Or we'll delete a bunch of the constraints or delete a large portion of what we're doing. And that's how all CAD softwares have been using their sketch tool until now. And that's because NX, they have delivered the biggest leap in sketching since sketching first started. It's kind of neat. There was an independent study, and they found that this new sketch tool, that there's a 30% time reduction spent capturing your design ideas. So it's going to make you 30% faster. What could you do with 30% more time? Could you make sure that design is better? Could you do additional projects? I think we all get the idea. This really is the future of sketching, because what NX Sketcher does now is it does the constraining for you. And that's pretty interesting, because we might say, wait a minute, the old NX, you could turn that on. And to a point you could, but it would only be for that specific line segment you were making. The new NX Sketch, it actually is analyzing the entire sketch, everything that you have, and it's looking for constraints. And you'll notice this third point. It says it works seamlessly with data regardless of the source. We're going to see that this afternoon. I'm going to take a part that is just a dumb solid, and we're going to be able to seamlessly bring it into a sketch and use that data. Works the same way with DXF files, AutoCAD files, things like that. So let's go ahead and jump in. You just close down my PowerPoint. Okay, so what we're going to start with is actually not the new NX. We're going to start with an older version of NX. I think this one's 1872. And I'm going to create a sketch, just like we would expect. And I'm going to make the world's simplest shape. I'm going to make kind of like an I-beam. So I'm just putting my lines in here. You'll notice I'm making sure everything's nice and lined up. This is a pretty standard thing that we would do. Everything's lined up. I took the time to do it. You'll notice that there are some constraints that have been made. You know, there's the coincident constraints, horizontal constraints. I took the time to line these up, but you'll notice they're not really lined up. I just sketched them that way. So if I wanted to line them up, I have to actually go in and add the constraints. So then I would go in and make it collinear. And I've got to do that all the way around. So let's compare that to our new sketch tool that we have. So I'm just going to create a new sketch. The first thing that you'll notice is instead of just giving us the datum coordinate system, it actually shows us the right, the top, the front, so that we have a lot easier chance of picking the correct one. So I'll just put it on the top. And I'm just going to put in the I-beam just like we had made previously in the other version. So again, it's the world's simplest shape. Just go ahead and throw this in there. You'll notice again, it's lining it up. You just strike to line that up. I really misjudged that one, didn't I? First thing you're going to notice is once this becomes enclosed, our entire, once it's enclosed, it starts to shade itself in. So that's point one, that everything's shaded in. Now I had these guys, when I put them in, I took the time to line them up. And you'll notice that they remain lined up. So just with that, look how much time we're actually going to start saving right off the bat. So point number one is that the software is looking for constraints. And then it gives us that nice ability to put those constraints right in there. Now I did this one a little quick, so maybe I'll do a quick undo. But I really misjudged that little side right there. So I'll just click and drag, move it on down to that bottom line. There we go. So the whole idea here is that the software, it's trying to figure out what you need. Now I said this in the presentation to start with, they're no longer called constraints. Now it's called relations. What the software is doing is it's looking for areas to add relations. And there's a lot to this. If you take a look at this tab, you might be thinking, okay, where are the dimensions? Where's my rapid dimension tool? Well, it's kind of cool. We don't have to use that anymore. If I want to add a dimension, all I have to do is select a line. And when I do that, you'll notice in green, I get this little dimension. But in blue, I also get these constraints. So you'll notice it found an offset, or excuse me, relation. See, I knew I was going to mess up on that. You see these relations. It found an offset relation or a collinear relation. If I want to add the dimension, I simply click on it, and I could move it or just click on it one time. And then I have the ability to go in and change up the dimension. And what's nice is I can use these little sliders on either side. If I wanted to have a dimension that's going between two different lines, that's easy as well. One pick, two picks, there's my dimension. So I'll just key in 285. Something else that's cool, pretty simple, but I think pretty cool, is if I switch over to the View tab, all the way to the right, and it's a hotkey Control up arrow, I can just increase the size of those dimensions. You know, sometimes it's just too small. If I double click on any dimension, again, what that's going to do is it's showing me all of the relations that are on the part. And what's interesting is if I were to click on one of these relations, it would relax it, which is another way of saying it would disable it. So let me add a couple of additional dimensions. So I'll just put a dimension here. And maybe for this dimension, whoops, that's maybe a little thin. For this dimension, I want the thickness to kind of be the same throughout the part. So for the bottom, that's easy, right? We would just say we want this line and that line. Where's my pop-up? Well, you'll notice we don't have a pop-up that pops up right next to your cursor and you've got to move your mouse there as fast as you can, right? You remember how annoying that was. Now it just remains at the top of the screen. And so I can make them equal. So it's clicking one, then the other, and equal. And just as a note, you could choose the relation that you wanted first and then choose the items that you want. So I've got that dimension, 25. Now I want this thickness through the body to also be 25. In previous versions of NX, this would say P0 or P3, whatever the parameter is we're on, equals 25. And then down here, I would just say it equals that thickness. Or where is that? It looks like it's gone. All you have to do is right-click on the dimension, and you could say add or remove expression. So now it's P0. And if I double-clicked on it, I could change it to thickness, THK. Now you might think at first, well, isn't that just an extra step? And in a sense, we could say it is, but it's actually better. When you had a complicated part and you went to look for expressions, do you remember how there would be hundreds, sometimes thousands of expressions? Every dimension is an expression. Well, with this way, you're only using the expressions that you actually need. So I can come back through here and change that one to thickness. There's a couple other things that I want us to notice on our part here. And that is all of the lines are brown. And what brown lines mean is you can move them. So it means that it's not fully constrained. So to constrain them, we just have to, or I should say to define them, we have to add a couple of additional relations. So let's do that. I'm going to use this really nice one called make symmetric. So I'm going to say I want the first line, the end line, and the middle. And that's going to lock that in there. And I'll add that type of constraint again. This time I'll go from the top to the bottom and this horizontal. Something else that you may have noticed is that I'm using these horizontal and vertical axes instead of, remember the arrows that we had in the previous versions? The cool thing about these is they go to infinity. So a really, really nice thing that we've been asking for quite a while. If I just start to click on my part, I can just see what else is going on. So I can just drag. And if you click on a point, that gives you a really nice amount of control for dragging. So maybe it's just a matter of clicking on one, then the other, making them equal. And then if we look at the bottom, sketch is fully defined. And we can see that it's black, which again, that means the sketch is fully defined. So in a very quick way, we're able to create this part. There's a couple other really neat things that we can do with this new sketcher. So some of these are simple, but I think they're pretty cool. I'm going to just add a fillet. So I'm going to put in a 10 millimeter fillet. And you know, we used to always just click once, click twice, but now we can use that pencil and just swipe through. Did you notice it didn't create a dimension there? It's because the software recognized it's the same. So it puts that relation in for us. In previous versions of NX, when you would have a nice straight edge and then cut a fillet through, you'd always get these virtual intersections, which is what we have here as well. The problem is, in previous versions, you'd have to control those. It would be a point kind of hanging in space. Watch what happens though when I close down my sketch. So I'm going to finish it and reopen it. Did you notice that virtual intersection? It's gone. It's because it wasn't used. And so for simplicity, the software realizes, you know what? Let's just get rid of it. All right, I'm going to finish this one. And I'm going to make one more real simple little sketch. And I'm just going to put a rectangle on our part. I'm going to add a dimension. And then I'm going to add an additional dimension. Now we might think, wait a minute, in previous versions of NX, this guy would glow pink or red because it's over constrained. But with the new version of Sketch, dimensions rule. So dimensions can override any relations. So we'll notice since we made this as a box or a rectangle, we've got the horizontals, we've got the verticals that are on there. But if I double click on this dimension, you'll notice both of the horizontals, they turned pink. What that means is that they are now relaxed, so that I could go in and make adjustments to this box. The dimension, it overrode the relation. So that's a big difference from previous versions of NX, where relations were king, and we encouraged everyone, don't use too many dimensions, but rather use lots of, in those days, constraints. But here you can see relations, that's what's king. If we wanted to adjust our part in a different way, just as a note, you can right-click and you can make it directional so that it only moves in one direction. And we can click on any relation. And what that'll do is it'll actually take and relax it. So let me finish that one. And we're going to look at just a couple of little examples. All right, here I've got this really simple little sketch. And let's just say we're just concepting right now. And I realize I need this to be longer. No problem, I'll double click. And it's not really doing what I want, is it? I wanted the entire part to grow from 80, not just that, not just the box. So I'll just do an undo. What we would do in previous versions of NX is we'd have to go in and fully define everything. But here's what's cool. All I need to do is put a box around this area and just move it. So I can take it, let's say, to 100, and notice just how easy that was to do. Again, it's all about that iterative process, or being able to create a bunch of concepts and do it really quickly. I'll finish that one. Let's go into this part. So when we take a look at it, there's just a couple high points. One, that's a weird looking dimension, isn't it? Approximately 475.2. Well, that approximate symbol, we can choose where it's set. But if I double click on the dimension, you can see it's one of those kind of crazy ones, 475.20815 and so on. So if I just take it to a whole number, or I can define, do I want it to go to 2 places, 3 places? Then it just cleans that up for me. And there's a couple things that we can, a couple other things we can do that are pretty neat. You're going to notice that we have these 2 buttons, relax dimensions, relax relations. We don't use relax relations too often, but we might use relax dimensions maybe a little more. Let me show you how that works. I just click relax dimensions, and then I'm just going to click and drag. And you'll notice in pink, the dimensions that are changing, they fire up so that I can see what's going on. But it allows me to make changes quicker. Granted, you could key these in. We just want to show you that's what that relax dimensions, what that does. And then relax relations, it just takes any relations that we have and relaxes them. That way we can make some adjustments. So far, we've seen that we can go in and we can dynamically move our parts around, left and right, up and down. There's another option that we have that's new, and it's called a rotate drag. We can take this little wheel and we can move it anywhere we want. But then what it allows us to do is to take part of our sketch and rotate it. We might think that's not that big of a deal, but think about how you would do that in other versions of NX. So let's just see how this works. I'm going to choose to relax my relations and my dimensions. And I'm just going to kind of put a box around this. I can see that there's a couple of other relations that are in there, and I want them to be relaxed. It's these symmetric ones. So I simply click on them, and then they're relaxed. So I should be able to just click. Maybe I'll just rotate that 90 degrees. Now, if you think about it, how long would that have taken in the previous version of NX? Something that simple. Quite a bit of time. Well, that's why this new version is just so much better, and it's really fast. Let me finish that. Let's take a look at using different pieces of data. So here you can see I've got this solid. It's just a dumb body, right? Maybe this is a brake caliper that came in from a vendor. How can we use this? I'm going to go to my synchronous modeling and I'm going to choose edit cross section. So I'm going to choose the faces and I'll just pick the entire thing. And I'm going to deselect the top and bottom face. And then I choose a plane. So I'll just choose that CSIS. And I want to go into a section. I'll just hide the body. And what we have is we have a sketch now that is a cross section of that part. What can we do with it? I'll just click on one of these little circles to add a dimension. So it's 6.4. Now if you'll notice, next to every other 6.4 hole, there is now an equal radius relation. The software looked and said every other one that's 6.35, they've got to be the same. So if I were to change that to 7, then all of the rest of them, they're going to change to 7 as well. If I were to add a dimension to the outside, notice what else I'm getting. There's an offset relation that's in there, a couple of equal radius relations. So what it's allowing us to do is it's allowing us to very quickly take a part that has a lot to it and make it more intelligent. Maybe I'll put another dimension for the center. Notice everything else that comes in now. So it's taking that center and it's saying, okay, now what have we seen? Hey, these guys are symmetric. So all of those relations, they're captured. So if I change that to 60, there we go. That it takes and it updates that for us. So really quick, really fast. And it's so powerful that I could choose, let's say, that center and strike a line, or strike a circle rather. Oops, I just want to make this guy a reference. But now if I were to go in and make any adjustments, you notice how the software identified, wait a minute, a reference circle went perfectly through each one of those centers. So it added another relation, an offset. So very, very fast. I'm just going to bring back the body and I'll finish my sketch and watch what happens. And I've got a lot open, a couple sessions of NX, which is probably bogging me down. Well, I'll just stop that. But you can see the power that we have with that new sketch tool, that even a part that has so much to it like this, it's really easy to create using the new NX sketch. And there are some other really cool things that I'd like to show, but I can see I'm just about out of time. So I think in the next version, we'll show how we can take a complicated sketch like this and how we can move this entire head, rotate it with just a couple of button clicks, something that would be impossible in previous versions of NX. One question that I'm sure you're wondering, how long can you use the old sketch? Well, hopefully you've gotten a little taste of the new sketch right now, and so you're thinking, okay, when can I get to the new sketch? Well, the old sketch, it's going to go away with version 1980. And the version I'm on right now is 1953, and so that's the default sketch in that one. And 1926 is when it started, but you had to turn it on. So the suggestion is don't wait, save time, use the new sketch. I'm just going to check on the GoToMeeting to see if I have any questions. Okay, no questions, great. So just a couple of other concluding points. The first is, please make sure to download that PDF file, because that's going to show you in depth how the new sketch tool works. Also, please mark your calendars, because the fourth Tuesday of each month, that's when we're going to have the Turk's Tips and Tricks. I'd like to thank all of you for your time and for your attention. You'll notice we've got this little QR code. Go ahead and scan it, and you'll be able to learn more about our upcoming webinars. If you have any questions about NX Sketch or about really any of Siemens products, go ahead and shoot us an email at sales@goplm.com. Again, thank you for your time and attention. The next time, we're going to spend even more time with the new and improved NX Sketch. Have a great day, everybody.